All right, g'day Paul, and welcome to this episode, mate. Glad you could join me. It's been a little while since we've had a chat, so it's going to be good to chat about all things Microsoft and Loop and Viva and SharePoint and Teams and everything that we get value on, and also give value to the audience as well. So thanks for joining me, mate.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. I've seen some great videos already and heard your podcast, so I'm fully excited to come on your podcast and your video.
Very, very good. Now, for those that are watching and listening, tell us a little bit about Paul, the person, and what it is that's keeping you busy, what you're doing, and also what's really sparking your interest in that type of thing in the industry at the moment.
Yeah, my name is Paul Keijzers. I'm from Amsterdam, Netherlands. Been working with Microsoft products since 2000, so really early years, I guess, and mainly focused on SharePoint first, then over to BPOS. Do you know BPOS still?
That is a long time. You've been around a lot longer than what I have, mate. So I do know what BPOS is, but I haven't worked with it. So you've got me there.
No worries. It changed to Office 365 eventually. So it was like a small business server on steroids. But now Office 365. And since 2017, I have been very busy with Microsoft Teams, especially as I like this product. I know the beginning of the product, what I've heard is that it started, it's built in 1 year with 18 people. So that's really awesome that they just made this product in this short of time. And well, since then, I only invested in Teams. I still do a lot of SharePoint as well on the side, but Teams is my main focus. And at the moment, I'm on a contract for a big bank in the Netherlands, and there I'm the product owner of the collaboration services. So that's quite interesting as well, because you can plot out the roadmap.
So you're also a Microsoft MVP as well, and we'll post a lot of the links to your channels and all that sort of stuff in the show notes as well. But you also generate and create a lot of very useful content to the community, and hence you have been awarded the Microsoft MVP award for many years now. So how did all that come about? How did you actually become an MVP, and what is it about the MVP award that really, I guess, really resonates with you?
Yeah, I've been an MVP since 2017, and so almost 5 years, or already 5 years. And what I did to become an MVP, and I get this question a lot. I think we had a conversation prior to your MVP-ship, but what for me makes a real MVP is generating content around the Microsoft community. What I did to become an MVP in the beginning is I posted a lot on the tech community. So I did question answer on the tech community quite from the beginning, actually, because first it was on a different platform. Now it's on the tech community. I did a lot on that. Next to that, I did a lot of blogs at that time. I didn't do any video at that time, so that's really something that came along. And I tried to apply for speaking at some events, but that was quite hard, because what you see is that sometimes people just ask the people they already know. So this is something which is harder. But with this new era of COVID, it totally changed. So now it's much easier to speak at virtual events, because you are new and you can just start speaking. But I still think it's a combination of things. So it's about answer question on tech community on other platforms. It's bringing a lot of blogs to the community, and at from my perspective, video is a must at this point. So
yeah,
that,
you've certainly taken on the video content a lot, and you certainly post out a lot of videos nowadays as well. But we often see you in videos with, dare I say, your better half as well of KbWorks. Now, how does that sort of content? And I hear there's some big news around the corner as well. Tell us a bit about that.
yes, that's true. I've been making videos with Debbie, who's my partner as well. And actually, she pulled me into the making the videos. First of all, I was like, okay, I don't want to be on camera. I'm not looking good. I'm talking a lot of shit. And then she said, well, we just have to try it. And we started, and we got some great comments of people, not negative. Some, of course, are negative, but most of them are positive. So that's where I started video. And we did the last 3 years, we did many Dutch videos. And this is going to change because, as you already mentioned, we have some big news coming. Debbie is pregnant. We are expecting in March. So that's going to be an exciting time. And Debbie has decided to take a step back in the company as well, because KbWorks is also my company together with Debbie, and she's taking a step back. So you will see more of me in the videos, especially in the Dutch videos. But I'm also, since we decided this, I thought, okay, why wouldn't I do the English version as well? Because if you do it together with two people, it's sometimes hard to do English as well at the same time. But now that I'm all alone, I will do an English version as well. And I think when I look at your videos, for example, you are really good at the creative mode as well. And your content is really great. So almost I think we are on the same page on the videos.
Yeah, I think. Well, I'm not sure about your audience as well, but I'm assuming it's fairly similar to mine as well. But those quick, short little videos really seem to help and resonate with people as well. Something that they can, quickly, whether it's a tip or a trick or a little bit of information or an update, something that's really quick and consumable. When people are scrolling through a feed or anything like that, is something that does seem to resonate with people as well. And a lot of what you're doing is doing the same thing. So being the solo person now, some people might take that as a good thing or a bad thing. You're losing a partner there, but congratulations on that news there, and it's going to be certainly a busy time for you next year. But yeah, congratulations.
Yeah. I think especially because maybe people don't know that, but Debbie used to be an ICU nurse,
Right.
and so it's really nice to have her on my side, because she can really ask the end user question.
Mm.
And
yeah, well, that's obviously becoming. Or always has been important, but increasingly so now.
Yeah. So that's quite interesting as well, because most people think we are only doing the adoption side.
Mm.
And actually we do development, we do, of course we do adoption, but more like a governance, that kind of stuff we also do. And that's, I think the videos are good, but sometimes people miss think we only do adoption, and we don't do that.
Yeah. Well, let's I guess turn our attention a little bit more to Microsoft Teams. Now, I was talking to Matt Wade the other day in a previous episode, and he sort of described Microsoft Teams as potentially being the next workplace operating system or workplace OS. It brings together everything into this one application, this one system. You fire it up in the morning, and you've kind of the ideology here is to have everything there in the one place. Are you seeing that sort of adoption to Teams as well? I know. Look, I know there's figures around about I can't remember off the top of my head how many thousands or millions of daily active users there are now in Microsoft Teams. But are you seeing a sort of a similar sort of approach there to Teams?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, what I think is people start up Microsoft Teams. They also, what people start during the day, they start up their Outlook because they're used to it. They see if the adoption is good, they only see external messages. Most of the time not, but okay. And they start up Microsoft Teams, or it's already automatically started. So they directly get into the workplace, and they have all tools available in Microsoft Teams. And this is something that in few years past, people wanted to have, or at least the IT department or HR or communication wanted to only push the intranet page. Maybe you know the era where you would log into the PC, and it would start up Internet Explorer, and then you would only get the intranet with old news, nothing new, and people would directly pop it away.
Well, that used to be the core part of user adoption, right? So how do we get people to actually use and see the intranet? Well, let's every single time they log into the computer, fire up Internet Explorer and set their homepage to the company intranet, and that used to be the pillar of user adoption.
Absolutely. And they said, well, the internet is so important because everybody uses it, but they didn't have any analytics, because if you look at it, if you start it on every PC when they log in, of course everybody's going to see it. So that's totally different. But I think with Teams now, and especially with the integration of Microsoft Viva, like Viva Connections, it makes it possible for communication to push a intranet site, but then within the Microsoft Teams environment. So people really want to go to there instead of that they get this pop-up of their Internet Explorer. So what's your vision on that as well?
Yeah, I think, especially with, Viva Connections, there are differing opinions, I guess, but Viva Connections is obviously just your, in a simplistic term, is just your SharePoint intranet set as your home site inside of Teams. So you're bringing that intranet content into the place where people are working. So I think by doing that, you are inherently going to be increasing the adoption of the intranet as well, because, in most cases, Microsoft Teams, not all, but in most cases, Teams is the place where people are living a lot of the time, doing their work, having their conversations, having their meetings. And by being able to bring that communication or that internal communication content and everything else that goes along with an intranet into that place where people are working, it goes to that whole concept of the flow of work, or reducing the context switching. So now, as a user, we don't need to go out. If we're in Microsoft Teams, we don't need to go out to the browser, fire up another tab, get the intranet, get the content, get your policies and procedures. We can just stay in the context of Microsoft Teams. I know that might sound, maybe a little bit simple or not that important, but over the course of a period of time, the amount of time that saves people by not having to think about where else to go to get to that content, I think is going to inherently drive up the adoption. And I'm sure you've heard this before as well. And the argument has been around or the debate has been around for a long time about the future of the intranet. But I still, and I'd be interested in your take on this as well. I still see the need and the absolute need for a place where people can go to a central place to access all of the company-related information. So that might be policies or procedures and guidelines and all of those, core organizational documents, as well as all the activities that I need to do as an employee. Apply for leave, expense claims, all of those other task-related things as well. I still think there's, right now, Teams by itself isn't going to replace that. But who knows what's going to happen in the future with the inclusion of Viva Connections. I think that then, blurs the lines a little bit because it's still SharePoint, but you're using Teams. A lot of people will think that it's Teams, but in essence, it is actually SharePoint. So what are your thoughts around that company intranet?
Yeah, almost the same. I must say, what I think, and this is, the intranet will still be important, but it all comes down on what do people search on the intranet. So if you do not make it interesting enough for people to come to an intranet, they won't come, because what do they need to see on the intranet when the same message is still there after a year? That kind of stuff is, I think, is really important. And I want to go one step back to the Teams part. You asked me about Teams, but I think in the end, we may even see a device with only Teams. That's something that I think it's like the Google Chromebook, where you have Chrome browser. I think in the end we may see a laptop with only Teams on it. So you only have to have a lightweight laptop. Still, performance is an issue in Teams. We all know that. But with a lightweight laptop, and you go to a client, and you only have your Teams available, that's your whole device. So it's going to be cheap and all performance.
Yeah, and that's I guess that perfectly aligns with what Matt was saying as well, being that being that workplace operating system. So that will be interesting. Obviously, there is the Google Chrome, and they advertise that quite heavily as well. So a similar thing and a similar approach could, be taken to Microsoft and Teams as well. That would be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, given you're focusing a lot on Teams, we'll get back to the banking sector in a minute, but what are you seeing and what have you seen, over the last 12, 24, even 36 months around businesses or even individual users that, what are the issues that people, or the confusions that people still have with Microsoft Teams, do you think?
Well, I think there are still quite a lot, actually, because
it keeps you in a job, right? Keeps you in employment.
Yeah, absolutely. But what most companies struggle with is the sprawl of teams. For example, they do not have a governance set up around that, life cycle management. Haven't set it up, but also they are still struggling. Okay, how do we let people create teams, or is it open to everyone? And I think this really depends on the organization. If you leave it open for everyone, or you close it for the whole organization, and you, for example, you have to file in a ticket to get a team. Then there's also the part on ownership, membership, and guests. There's still a lot of confusion around that. What can a guest do? What can a guest not do? For example, if you are a member of another Office 365 environment, you have to tenant switch. And if you are like in the situation of the banking, for example, they have multiple tenants set up and they have to switch every time. So this is something we will hopefully have solved with Teams Connect. But what happens is, a question I got a lot is like, okay, I message somebody, a guest in our tenant, but he's not responding. And that's logical because the guest first has to switch to the tenant to see the message. So what I do is, in all my guest tenants, I set up a message that they have to look for the external person. So that's something that's really, I think this should be like, okay, if I message somebody, it should be in the correct tenant. It shouldn't be a guest message. It should directly go into the correct tenant.
And when you're saying that, that's the in Teams you've got the name and then in brackets guest and then in brackets external. That's what you're talking about there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And another thing which is confusing for users is, for example, they only see the names that they are part of in a tenant, so in a team. So if for example, if I would invite you in a team where me and Debbie are in, you won't see any other colleagues of us because it's security trimmed, but people don't know that. So that are things like I hear a lot. Next to that, I still think that the knowledge of, for example, you want to have a webinar or a live meeting and you have your setting on internal only, they first have to be a guest in your team before they can join the live event or the webinar. And this is something that's also confusing. And I think it's still a part where it can be better. But if we look at what has happened the last year, especially around breakout rooms, for example, that you can have multiple organizers and you can have the multiple people assigning, I think that's a great improvement for Teams, for example.
And so have you seen, you spoke about the sprawl of Microsoft Teams and that being a challenge. Do you think that's been, it's been increasingly so during this pandemic period where people have kind of been forced to make that transition a lot faster. So there's just team after team after team after team after team being created. And now, organizations are now starting to think that we need to rein all this in now. We've got content over here and here and here and here. How do we, I guess there's now, the approach is now trying to go backtrack a little bit and clean up those environments.
Absolutely, and I think this is something that is at the moment, at least where I see it, is still something that's really critical. Because what are you going to do? Are you going to archive a team? What happens is the data becomes read-only, or are you going to delete a team after the life cycle has happened? And as the sprawl is big, you don't know what content is in the libraries. So this is something that's really like, okay, what I hear is that some people want to move data that is in an archive team to a SharePoint site as their storage. So they still have their storage available and they can just get rid of the team. There are things that sound easy, but if you would do like just a normal user would do, move the item, you directly lose the version history.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff, I think it's really important to think it over as from a Microsoft side.
And I guess that's a really important step to take for anybody watching and listening as well. A really important step to take before you embark on even rolling out Teams? Because I know there's a lot of organisations out there that are using Teams, but they're only really using it for chats and calls and meetings and that type of functionality. And now what they're looking at doing is actually rolling out Teams and utilizing the platform for different capabilities. So now is probably a really important time for those type of companies to really take that planning and the governance and the lifecycle management on prior to opening things up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And
What about the banking sector? So you were mentioning you're talking that you're doing a lot of work in that space at the moment. How does that? Are you finding much difference in how that type of organisation operates, and are there different focus areas for that type of vertical as opposed to others?
yeah, in general, yes.
Mm,
If we look at Office 365 in general, it's way more secure, which is logical because they
mm,
have all their high standards. And what you see, and that's something I see as well in a lot of companies, they have rolled out Teams, but don't have like sensitivity labels, for example, or they haven't set up a provisioning system. And this is something that at the bank they have to know. Okay, this is coming. Here we are. This is what we are going to implement. For example, when you are in a small company, you directly download your Office updates. If you are in a bank, they have to have several rings where they roll out the updates.
mm,
But for example, Teams is again a different system because Teams is not included in the update cycle of Office. So what happens is that sometimes you get, for example, employees calling and they say, well, this functionality is not working in Teams. And then I often say, okay, go to the browser, try if it's working in there. And then most of the time it works there. Then I say, okay, try to update Microsoft Teams and try it again. And then, of course, it works. But only the thought of in the banking, it's going automatically and it's well governed. Compared to a normal company is a huge difference.
yeah. Does that and how does that affect then? I mean, how do organisations like that manage the change and the user? I guess the user training about what features are coming, what's rolling out. Is that something that's done well or differently in organisations like that?
I think overall it's done almost everywhere the same.
Yeah.
So it's not that the bank is doing something different. What I do think and what most companies miss is just bringing the information. This is going to change. Be aware of it. Or the IT organization or somebody has to create content on what's coming and what is going to change. And this is there are only a few organizations that have this well in place. Most of the organizations don't have that in place. They just say somebody calls in and say, oh, this new button is there. And even the IT goes like, okay, we didn't know that. what has changed? And things like that. I think for a good adoption experience, we've seen learning pathways, which is great. But I think the combination of Viva Learning and learning pathways is going to be great.
Yeah,
Especially
good.
it comes.
Good
It comes
segue. Good segue into Microsoft Viva, the topic that I'd also like to have a chat to you about. So, it's been around for a little while, and it's starting to become part of a lot of organisations. And we've obviously got the four modules of Viva. give me your, and you mentioned to me before we started recording, you've done a little bit of work with Viva and implemented maybe not all the modules, but some modules into organizations. So how is that going, and what are your thoughts around, I guess, what modules are bringing the most value right now?
Well, I think I've listened to Matt's podcast with you as well. I'm almost on the same page
he shared
as
some
him.
interesting insights, yes.
Yeah, I'm almost on the same page with him. And what I see is that at the time, Viva Connections is the hottest topic.
Yeah.
To be honest, everybody wants to have, and they think Viva Connections is only the button in Teams, but it's, of course, it's more. It only also has a dashboard. It's making it more visible in your Teams app, for example, on your mobile. You can directly go to your cards. So that's asked the most. And prior to Viva Connections, there was already a possibility to add a button to your intranet within Teams. So, but Viva Connections on itself is something I guess most companies want to implement directly.
Why do you think that that's the one that companies want the most? Is it because it brings the intranet basically into Teams, and that's the key the key selling point, or is it the dashboards?
Well, I think the key selling point is really to bring in the intranet in Microsoft Teams. At least that's what I see in the request I get.
Yeah.
But people don't even know that the dashboard exists.
No.
So once you tell them, okay, there's also a dashboard where you can have your cards and you can have you can even customize the cards. You can do a lot with the cards as well. Then they think, oh, so it's more. Yes. Yeah, it's definitely more. So I think that's the key point why. First of all, they want the button, and then you start explaining also what it does more. Then they say, okay, and then they are going to think, okay, how can we implement this in our organization, and what can we do with it? If we look further on the Viva side as well, the Viva Insights, that's something that's interesting as well. And I think there's still a lot of adoption to be done on that side as well. Because
there is definitely.
If you look at Viva Insights, it gives you exactly how many hours you worked. If you need to have focus time, it really helps you in every way. But what I get most of people when they have insights, they say, oh, I get this annoying email every day or every week with telling me what I have to do. Why can't we remove that? And that kind of stuff, it's just about knowledge. People don't know why it's there. And I think there's still a lot of knowledge to be shown there because people don't understand why first of all, they are afraid of the data that is written by the Microsoft people. So they say, okay, they can even look at my agenda. They can even look at my emails. How come? It's my private data. So there's really a lot of learning and adoption there.
One of the, I think one of the most interesting ones and one of the most valuable modules, I think, is Viva Learning. I think that's, something that's going to bring a lot of value. And I'm really starting to see the value of being able for organizations to connect, their internal repository of learning material. And you spoke before about, the release or the change management side of things, letting users know that these things are going to happen these features are going to roll out. There might be a new button that appears here at some point, and all of that sort of stuff. And Microsoft do make, with their messages in the message center, update your training materials and all that sort of stuff. But I think Viva Learning is going to be a platform where organizations can really start to implement a really good approach to that, as well as obviously bringing in learning from other places if they've got licenses as well.
Absolutely. I really think that the learning part is going to be crucial, as well as it's coming to Teams again, and it gives you a perfect overview of all learning. So you can have multiple platforms in there, so like Pluralsight, LinkedIn Learning, Learn from Microsoft, but also your own SharePoint environment, which is great again. And you can even point somebody, okay, this could be something for you. And especially around learning and, for example, a piece of onboarding, you could say, okay, we have this e-learning, Viva Learning in our Teams. There you will find information on our onboarding system. So yeah, I think that's quite interesting, and I think it's going to be expanded even more in the future.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you can, let's say HR people, you talk about that onboarding scenario, but you can curate, specific videos from it, and it doesn't matter where they're from. It could be your internal learning videos, or it could be LinkedIn Learning, but you can curate that whole experience for a new user. So when you think about a new user coming into a company and we're using Office 365, but they also need to learn how to apply for leave and do their pay and do their timesheets and all that sort of stuff, you can actually bring all of that and curate the right information and present that to that user in a almost like a little package, so that they don't get overwhelmed with everything that's there, which I think is going to bring a lot of value. Yeah,
absolutely, I fully agree on that. And I think what's going to be interesting is, because it's an add-on on Teams or on Office 365, I'm really curious if people or companies are want to pay the extra for Viva. I think some companies will, because they directly see, okay, this is the positive side, but some companies will say, okay, no, it's not for us. The investment is too big.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It'll be interesting. Be interesting to see what the uptake is and how that plays out now with the licensing model and everything like that. Now, another interesting application that's not generally available yet, and was announced at Ignite, is Microsoft Loop. Now, give me your elevator pitch for Microsoft Loop. What is it?
My elevator pitch. Well,
I'll put you on the spot.
Microsoft Loop is really a great new product, which makes it possible to have a really fast communication on your priorities. For example, if there is a Prio one, you can have a board like you used to have OneNote, or you still have, but it's much more collaborative for working, and you can directly update each other, and it's really real time. So sometimes in other Microsoft products you still see some lag, but in the Fluid framework it's really fast and you directly have your information available. The other side,
that's pretty good. Now, what are your thoughts on what type of users or groups of people do you think are going to benefit from Microsoft Loop?
I think the users that work together a lot they used to go into a room, and now they have their meeting and they set up the Fluid framework next to it, or the Loop, and they can directly collaborate on it. I think that's the main thing. So you can add your task, you can add your add mentions directly. So I think that's where most people will use it. But I'm still curious because now we have it available already in the chat. So in Microsoft Teams chat, you can directly start your Fluid. But I'm curious how it's going to be displayed. And with that, I mean, like, okay, now, for example, if you open a new loop, then it's saved to the organizer's OneNote or OneDrive, sorry. But it's still not like a document. For me, it feels like still there. It's just air. It's not. How do you say that? You cannot feel it. Where you can open a normal document in Fluid or in Loop, you have to go to the page, and there you have your information. So still there is still some things I think could be better. Although I think the product is really awesome, and I think if we can use it like they are investing it, so you can move your loop into Outlook or into another application, then it's going to be awesome, because this means that you can use Loop in the application you work the most with, and which is your favorite application.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be one of the really powerful things is being able to grab those loop components or live components as they're known now, and they're the things that we can actually use now in Teams chats and meetings. And I was doing some work with it the other day, and just being able to copy one of those live components. Let's say you and I are having a conversation. We start up a live component. We've got a table and some tasks and different things in there. But what I can do is copy that component or container of all of that that functionality, paste it in another Teams chat with somebody else, and that then automatically gives them access to that. Right, so it shares that with them, and now even though that person wasn't in the conversation you and I were having, they can still have that live component and start working on it. And you and I are looking at it in our chat; they're looking at it in a different chat, and it's all live. And then expanding that out, if the vision is correct, expanding that out into Outlook or other endpoints as well, I think is going to be really, really powerful. I think for collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is something that's renewal of the whole Office 365, Microsoft 365 environment. So I think we are going to see more and more of this kind of stuff, which means that in the end, maybe you can have your favorite team on the left side, your chat on the right side, but you can switch them on the fly. The Fluid framework is, or the live components would make it possible. Absolutely.
Yeah. Even, I mean, it makes the whole meeting experience a lot, dare I say, fluid as well. Being able to do all that live and get your tasks done live. And I know there are ways to do that now already, whether it's OneNote or Planner or To-Do or whatever the case may be. But with that component by itself, it's a living organism. Even after that meeting's finished, it continues on, which I think is going to improve that meeting experience as well. Now, as we wrap things up, mate, what are some things that you've seen that are coming out that I guess you're looking forward to, and you think that are going to bring a lot of value to customers or users or businesses across the entire platform? Doesn't necessarily mean Teams or that type of thing. What's interesting from your point of view?
Well, what's interesting is what actually is rolling out now, I guess, or at least in January, is the front row, or at least the new Microsoft Teams room environment.
Yes. Yep.
what I've heard is that they updated, or at least there's a rollout going on now for your room system, and that's something that's going to improve a lot of the room. We didn't talk about mesh, but I think the mesh is going to be interesting. Although I still think it's more like a gimmick, but that's my point of view.
That's right. Do you think that's going to take off?
I don't know.
Well,
I'm
similar
really
to Spaces, right? I mean, Spaces was touted as a almost like a game changer as well, but that's kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit.
Yeah, although I know what's his name. He's working at Cerner, and he made a beautiful Spaces environment. Right. Where you can view the rooms and already can see which devices are in there, how many capacity, etc. So that's really an awesome thing. I'm gonna think who it was.
Yeah, do that and let me know, and we might include that. Yeah, include that in the show notes as well, and have a chat.
Yeah, that sounds great. And further, of course, I think the Viva suite will be expanded. With more products. As you see that Microsoft is buying some new companies, they will be implemented in Viva, I guess.
So the OKRs and that type of thing, I think is something that's going to be interesting when that rolls out too.
And that's going to make the whole Viva suite interesting to buy it as a suite and not only one product. So that's something that's really, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, interesting. Now, we spoke at the top of the show about the content that you're putting out there. A lot of great stuff that tips and tricks and updates and just general information. So where can people consume that? Where can they find you? What's the best place?
Well, we have our own YouTube channel, KbWorks. I'm on Twitter, Twitter handle also KbWorks. LinkedIn, Paul Keijzers. That's where most of the content is living for me, at least. I'm not on Facebook, or at least I am on Facebook, but I'm not doing anything with it. And I'm on Instagram as well, but most of the content is LinkedIn and YouTube.
Excellent. I'll put all of those links in the show notes as well. So everybody that's watching and listening, I highly recommend you following Paul and his content, putting out some really good stuff. So make sure you jump onto his socials, follow him so that you're receiving all of that. Now, mate, as I said, really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's early there. You've got a very busy few months, both business-wise and personally-wise. So I wish you all the best. And once again, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. It was a great honor to be on your show.